1. We are live.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Hey, there we is. How you doing?
Yeah, and that's an anthem. I'm starting to love that sound.
Do you really?
Well, I'm actually liking it. Yeah. Great. Oh,
We could talk to your government and see if they'll change it for you. I mean, we can...
they're willing to change about anything for you right there. If you give them enough money, they'll do damn near anything, those guys. Some days I wonder. We're hoping that they will change. We got a change coming. By God, we're going to do something with these artists, and we're going to straighten something out.
Very cool. Well, you have an interesting show today. Not like the usual. So this is like a real in-depth show.
It's an information show, but of interest. And boy, I tell you, I've been a member of this group for a long, long time.
Right.
Long time, not a long, long, long time, but a long time. CARFAC National, and they have a regional representation through each chapter, but we'll talk about that. Today we have two guests. I mean, we're talking about copyright and AI and how it's all affected. A lot of different things. We're going to talk with April Britzky, who is the national CEO director of CARFAC National, and Daniel Rumbold, who is the vice president. And April's in Vancouver, and Daniel's in Montreal. And today we're going to try and open this sandwich up. My God, we're just going to see what comes out, because they have the information that we need to know as artists, what they're doing for artists and what's going to be coming down the pipe. There is big things coming. Like this is major. Like people don't realize what's working on in the background, how things are moved and how things shake, and how you deal with governments, especially as artists, or all these other organizations have lobbying bodies, to go after your MPs and your representatives. And this group has been around for over 50 years, and they've been working like a dog. And I've been a member in my own local chapter in Saskatchewan for quite a few years, and I've seen what this board does. They're very active. Anyway, they got lots of hurdles to go through, and I'm excited about talking to them about it, and let's just do it.
Let's bring them in. Here's April, and here's Daniel. Guys, have a wonderful show. We'll see you at the end.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Yeah, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thank you. This is exciting. I've waited a long time to have this type of a show. I'm fortunate with 2OF that we were able to put a show like this on with Artists in Canada. April, can you give us, I guess we'll call it the elevator pitch. Can you tell us a little about who is our CARFAC? What are we doing here? Like, why are you here? And the benefits and the different things. Give us your little shtick, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So CARFAC stands for Canadian Artists Representation, Le Front des Artistes Canadiens, and we're Canada's national association for visual artists. So we advocate for artists' rights, and we negotiate better rates of pay for their work. We're sort of like a union in that way. We have over 4,000 members who are artists living in communities from coast to coast to coast across Canada. One of our slogans is artists working for artists, and that's really true. Our board of directors and most if not all of our staff actually are all artists, and most of us, including Daniel and myself and you too, Paul, we get involved because as artists, we're looking for a network, for advice, for resources from other artists who know what it's like to go through the challenges and have the same opportunities as artists. So we provide a lot of professional development opportunities, publications on things like copyright and tax planning, all the stuff they don't teach you in art school, how to export your art. We are connected to clinics with lawyers and accountants that help artists navigate different issues. We have I think, I can't remember if I said workshops, webinars, conferences. We provide discounts for our members to different art supply stores and other retailers, free entry to museums and galleries in Canada and other countries too, because we're also connected to similar organizations who do what we do internationally. And yeah, that's mainly. Am I missing anything, Danielle?
No, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a lot more, but we're gonna jump into it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think artists need to understand it's a great support system. It's like around and say, oh, I'm going to ship something to England, like the UK, and I have no idea. I said, well, great place to start is CARFAC, and you just go to the website and off you go. And I think we're going to just start with our first visual because we can just talk over top of that, and it's pretty representational of a visual artist. I think that's mostly what we're talking about initially today is visual artists. Do you handle other artists as well, like musicians? Is that part of anything you do, or?
No, there are other associations and unions that do that, but we work really closely with ACTRA, Canadian Actors Equity, the Writers Union of Canada, the Dance Alliance, like lots of different groups that we regularly come together with.
Yeah. So I think we're just going to start with the first visual. I mean, it's not a great visual, but it's a great person that we have visually placed here. A lot of copy on the page, but basically it's a picture of Jack Chambers from 1968. Can you tell us a little bit about Jack, what he did and his group of three guys with, I guess there is Jack Chambers, Tony Agulicut, and Kim Odajne. I think that's right. Is that spelling?
Tony Urquhart and Kim Ondanche. Yeah. So a lot of people will tell you that you get great exposure if you have an exhibition or if they can use your work in various ways. But if you're not getting paid for that exposure, it comes at a cost to you as an artist. Ultimately, it's your time making the work. It's the time preparing for an exhibition or some other kind of opportunity. You actually have expenses like shipping and framing and various different things that come about to participate in these things. And so a lot of people don't realize that galleries didn't always pay artists. But back in 1968, the National Gallery invited a bunch of artists, including Jack Chambers, to participate in a show. And they weren't offering payment of any kind. And so he said, enough of that. Like, we can't do this. And so he wrote to the other artists, and they all together said, no, you need to pay us for these kinds of opportunities. And that's how CARFAC was born. And so since 1968, we've been recommending on what artists should get paid for exhibitions and reproductions of your art. And more recently, we've developed some rates for other services that artists provide, like giving a talk or preparing for a show, installing a show, those kinds of things. And so our guidelines for payment are found in the CARFAC RAV minimum recommended fee schedule, which is available online. I'll share the link. And yeah, since the 70s, the Canada Council for the Arts said to the art museums and galleries, if you're going to have, like, in order to apply for funding, you have to pay CARFAC fees. And then other things came later, so we'll talk about that more, about what happened in 1988. But yeah, it's...
We got like two major topics that we're going to discuss today, because we don't have a lot of time, but I think it's enough time that we can get intensely into a couple of sections of it. And I think, understanding the beginning of where CARFAC came from and why it was formed and the benefits to every Canadian. I mean, every Canadian artist can use this, especially the fee schedule that we're going to talk about shortly. And maybe Danielle can speak to the chapters, the way it's set up. So basically, CARFAC National has chapters across Canada that there are representative. And how is the government set up for that? How are you as the government? So they are part of, all underneath the shell of CARFAC National?
I mean, you can kind of think of CARFAC National as sort of the umbrella organization under which all the regional affiliates sort of operate. And it's definitely not April's in charge of everything and it's a micromanagement. It's a lot of different ecosystems, and they have to navigate their own province and their own communities. But thankfully, we have this sort of national network that we can all kind of collaborate and do projects together and use each other's resources. So I actually started with VANL CARFAC, which is Visual Artists Newfoundland and Labrador. started back in 2018. It's been almost 6 years since I've been on the national board now, so it feels like a long time, but also give me 6 more, I'm ready for it. And so what these regional chapters do is they usually have their own teams of staff. They're all very small teams, their own different memberships and fees associated with that. So if you want to get involved with your regional chapter, you can check out their website, and they're all linked through the CARFAC national website as well. So it's very easy to navigate all of that. And they also offer their own programs. So speaking to Vanel, we do our Excellence in Visual Arts Awards every single year and a mentorship program. The mentorship program actually exists in a couple of other chapters as well. So I really encourage people, wherever you're located, please check out your regional chapter and kind of see, okay, what's available to me, what services are there, and just know that when you become a member of these regional chapters, you are automatically a part of CARFAC National. Your membership counts towards all those benefits that April talked about earlier. And you'll notice on the list, of course, we have RAV listed as well, which is the representation group in Quebec. We work very closely with them on a lot of our programs and a lot of the things that we're developing. And you'll notice that when it comes to a lot of the northern territories and provinces, they actually just get their their membership through CARFAC National. So everyone is included here, like April said, coast to coast to coast. These are sort of the smaller teams that come together and make all these amazing things happen. And we're going to talk more about that soon.
Yeah, regional representation is really important because we all have different needs in our regions, and it's great that our governments are hopefully supportive of funding for some of this, because this is essential. If you can feed artists and artists can have creative programs, it's better for everybody. I'm really a believer in that, and the artists need those kind of opportunities, and to have our MPs and our representatives understand that it's really important. And I think CARFAC, as a lobbying body, with these regional chapters, can have connections to their regional governments, which is really nice. But it's really nice to have the artists that are behind those governments, our internal governments, to help support that lobbying process. So if you need to protest, you're not standing there by yourself on the steps of the government. There's a few other people behind you saying, yeah, this is a valid thing that we're asking for. So we'll just move on a little bit here. But I guess when I saw initially, CARFAC was formed because of artist fees and copyright. Almost was it sort of at the same time almost? They're two major things. They're two major programs. And I don't think they ever end. I just think they're just you think, oh my God, I said copyright, you just got it in place. We can put that one to bed. It's done.
No.
But anyway, is that sort of true? Like, is that how copyright was part of that in the early beginnings as well, or was it mostly about just the fees to start with?
So when we first started recommending fees, we called them rental fees because it was the rental of the art for the purposes of an exhibition. And I think we really started as a more grassroots effort with that in mind. We were regularly meeting with galleries across the country, and that's actually a big deal when you think about it. When I meet with my colleagues in other countries, most of whom do not have exhibition fees, they think about, well, I'm a country and you're a country. Well, ours is enormous. So actually doing that advocacy work from coast to coast to coast is huge. So it didn't just happen overnight, and it certainly continues today. We're regularly doing consultations on changes to the fee schedule. It's not something we made 55 years ago and it hasn't changed. Like, it's regularly in development. And so it was started as a rental fee, and then as I mentioned, the Canada Council said, in order to get funding, you have to pay. And we also thought we should really put this in the Copyright Act in order to make it a legal right that artists are entitled to. And so, yeah, I would say, copyright is definitely a huge part of how a lot of artists earn a living, whether it's exhibition fees, reproduction fees, or we're advocating for a few others today that we'll get into later. But
Artists understanding that they can be paid to have a show in a public gallery. That's what the fees are. Not a commercial gallery. This is a public
No.
gallery. So, and as an individual, I really encourage artists to build their portfolio with public showings. You know, to get your stuff into permanent collections, outside of personal people buying things, you need to have a number of public showings every year to show your work is out there. And I've seen it with other artists that are senior artists that haven't had hardly any public shows. It has affected them seriously in the end of their lives because they have no exposure. They have no exposure nationally, regionally, maybe locally a little bit, but not big enough that, say, a museum wants their work. And I think CARFAC offers a very serious piece of that programming and an opportunity. My gosh, you're going to be paid dollars to have a show and exposure that comes with that. And there's so many other benefits to that kind of programming. But we'll talk about the fee structure a little bit more. This was I've read across this shot. I went, oh my goodness, there's some pretty famous people in this shot. In a pivotal moment here in 1988, you know. Can you talk to this image that we're looking at here at the moment a little bit?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, like the payment of artist fees, or CARFAC fees, as it was often known, had become standard practice by the 70s. But in 1988, we convinced the federal government to make it so that artists have to be paid for non-commercial exhibitions of their work. And so there was a big rally, and I'm assuming other changes happened to the act at the same time, because there's a lot of prominent artists in that photo who are not visual artists, Margaret Atwood being one of the main ones, Burton Cummings, Pierre Burton. There were a lot of like big name artists involved in this this effort. But yeah, so since 1988, galleries are supposed to be paying exhibition fees if the work is not for sale.
Right. It's great that the media picked up. I mean, this is in this is a historical piece of work. This we're looking at a black and white photo here of the actual news conference, and it's you know, when you Google search it, it's now an iconic image that represents that moment in time. We are actually creating history as we move through it. We're so young; we're only 50 years old in what we're as CARFAC is doing, and so it's really an understanding. You're watching history yourself, and you're seeing artists and artisans that are in those shots that you recognize, and you actually could go up and at one time, you know, talk to them. You know, except Pierre, maybe not Pierre. We go in. We're actually moving along nicely now because I think we have three major subjects we want to talk about, and all of us have this. You know, AI and copyright is what we're looking at here. And how is AI? Is it affecting our copyright? I mean, we're constantly revisiting this. I mean, is copyright doing the job it's supposed to be doing? And it's being picked away from different sources, trying to get their own shtick on it, like their way. But now you throw AI into the mix. And it's sort of like this third-party blaming thing. You can point your fingers at it, but you can't touch it. You know, it's sort of one of those things. And a lot of artists are kind of leery. How do we look at this as artists? How's this going to affect us? Can you give us a little bit of insight as to the vision of that?
Yeah, so it's interesting you moved from 1988, which, you know, Daniel and I were not part of CARFAC when that happened, but we're very much part of it now that new challenges are coming up. And so there's always going to be something new, of course. And yeah, with AI, like most of us didn't really understand what kind of impact it might have on visual artists even a year or two ago. But now it's you know, something that's pretty central in many of our discussions. And artists are mixed. Like there's a lot of artists who embrace it and maybe even use it as a tool. I know a lot of photographers use it as a tool, just like they do Photoshop. But most, if not all, artists have some pretty deep concerns about it as well. You know, that it's going to be used to sort of trample on your copyright. It might take away work opportunities. There's a lot of like unknowns and big challenges ahead. So last year we surveyed our members, and some of our provincial chapters offered webinars, having conversations with artists to get different perspectives on it. We participate in AI working groups in Canada and internationally, and we've all kind of come down to the same conclusions about what we want to see have happen as things sort of evolve. And essentially what we're looking for is what we call the 3 C's principle, that artists should have to give consent in order for their work to be used by an AI company. They should be credited as, the creator of their work, and they should be compensated if their work is used through AI. And that these kinds of things need to be guiding our government's actions. So, yeah.
No, I think they are serious, and I think when our host Stephen is if he's there, he could pop in and just make his comments on AI if he's here. But I think it's kind of it's scary in a way because it's like this new territory, the new frontier, and it's affecting everyone. It's not just visual art; like it's written, music, everything. It's huge.
It's everywhere in our lives. Like if anybody's ever used Google Translate, you've been using AI for like 10, 15 years.
It's a problem within like academia. It's a problem everywhere. And I think, April, one of the key things you said that's important is that this is a global issue. And there's always going to be issues like this happening. But thankfully, we do have the networks that we can come together and say, okay, well, what are the approaches? And it's difficult to say what is the one solution to AI right now because it is changing so quickly and it is a highly accessible way to use the tool. Like you don't have to be paying millions of dollars to just go on Google and use AI to generate an image that steals from thousands of people. So it's like, how do we kind of navigate something that's ever changing and kind of ephemeral right now? But yeah, we get asked about it a lot. And I think thankfully it's on everybody's mind. So we're all working together on it for sure.
Yeah, well, hopefully we are. I think it's I mean, we don't want to, as artists, be protectionists of a lot of things, but what is ours? We'd like to believe that it's ours. I mean, artists themselves have in the past been doing works that are responsive. They respond to a Picasso or a Guernica. Guernica. They can do certain works of their own that respond, but they've been doing it with their hand and their brush or their camera or video or something. So you're working with an idea that was existing, but you've now made it your idea. So we've had areas where we're without the use of AI, but use of your own personal skill, and you look at it, and it's up to you whether you want to credit where the initial idea came from. But usually, it kind of shows up in the style of work you might do, or in your artist statement, you might say something about your presentation, which is whether, like I said, video or film or just two-dimensional painting. It could even be sculpture that you do. So anyway, it's just I don't know if we go on too much more on that one. I think we can talk about that for probably years. Like and all it is spec.
We will be probably.
yeah, it's not going away. Like we can hate it all we want, but it's definitely not going to go away. And
it's a little bit like it'll
evolve.
Yeah, it's a little bit like controlling the hole you dug in the sand. You'll never get the hole dug. It keeps coming in from all sides. So you're never going to get a really nice, clean hole up unless you put a barrier up of some kind, which we don't like barriers a lot of times in what we do. So anyway, we've moved on to exhibition fee schedule, which it sounds kind of confusing to me a little bit, the title, but it does make sense as to what it is. I mean, has the artist been paid? I mean, I should have worn my shirt. I have. I forgot. I got to wear something today. I should put that. Yeah. And I'll like at the bottom. I just always want to write on the bottom occasionally.
Yeah.
How big is the problem? Yeah. Occasionally it is.
How big is the problem? So can we speak to this a little bit? I guess we did talk in the front end a little bit about it because that's where we were formed. But again, it's always about education, re-education. We have, even in our home city here, my home city, we have a gallery that offers schedule fee, but it's not the same rate as your schedule fee, as they should be advised to be paying for public exhibitions. So what is the responsibility of civic governments that own galleries to understand their obligation to follow the legislation that was put down for them? Can I leave it at that?
Well, I think with the Exhibition Right in the Copyright Act, it gives the artist the right to be paid, but it doesn't say how much to pay. And that's why we exist, because we provide guidelines, like minimum recommended guidelines. We call it a minimum fee schedule. We also know some view it as the maximum fee schedule. And, for the most part, we understand that most people pay our rates, but occasionally certain types of rates they don't pay exactly what we're recommending, and there's not much we can do if people don't tell us. So one of the things that we want to offer is well, anybody can always contact us and tell us, but we might want to make it a little bit more clear on our website that if somebody's not offering you the rates that we're recommending, let us know, because there's not much we can do about it. So there was an issue that happened with lots of different types of galleries out here in British Columbia where nobody was getting paid for a certain type of show. And so we started looking at how big of a problem it is. Is it just one gallery with one artist, or is it all of the galleries and all of the artists that they show? And then we were able to come up with a new rate that was put into the fee schedule this year as a result, because we heard from enough people that it was a problem. So it's not usually a big problem, but we definitely need to hear from more people about when it is.
Yeah. So is funding a big problem for some of those galleries regionally?
Yeah.
So
sometimes
they need to find their arts board type of funding from their governments, local or provincial or otherwise, or patrons, or however they receive their funding, to pay the artist through their turnstile a little bit. I mean, a lot of them have to understand some of these galleries do receive payment when you walk through the door. Like people pay to see these shows. Some of them, some are free and they're paid through your tax dollars to go to these public places. So he's saying, again, pay the artist. Like the artist needs to be paid for that. I guess we're entertaining at a certain point. You're creating a visual entertainment of some kind.
Yeah, it's always difficult because, I mean, for CARFAC, we're never going to recommend you pay less to an artist. This is what we're advocating for.
It's the minimum.
Exactly, it's the minimum. And we also are still very aware of the precarious arts funding that a lot of places receive. And something for the listeners in particular, thinking about like, oh, this maybe doesn't apply, I don't show at the National Gallery. No, this is all public art organizations, institutions. So whether it's a small artist-run center or whether it is a National Gallery, the fee schedule does apply. We have various sort of scales and categories that fit the operating budget of the organization. So it does kind of slide in that way. But I think maybe in particular, the regional chapters have a lot of power to do that sort of lobbying work when it comes to saying, hey, listen, these are the fees. We're never going to say pay less of an artist fee, but we do want to lobby and come together and say there needs to be more arts funding collectively. So, I mean, that's kind of another place of CARFAC. I mean, we're advocates, we're lobbyists. We sort of know how to do that type of work, and it's been successful in the past. I mean, in Newfoundland, within the past 5 years, VANO was, a small part of a large movement that happened within the province to advocate for more funding through the Newfoundland and Labrador Arts Council. Right. It had sort of stagnated for a number of years, and people were running into this problem. Like, hey, we want to pay these rates. We want to be respectful and responsible of paying artists, but the money isn't coming in. And so through sort of collective action and lobbying and that movement, they committed to an extra $5 million over 5 years, which was a huge investment for the, looking at the total from Arts NL. So that type of work does happen, and it needs to continue to happen. It's unfortunate that we're seeing cuts kind of across the board, whether it's Canadian Heritage or Canada Council, and it does kind of mean it's more difficult to make these payments. But I think that there's enough faith in artists and there's enough faith in CARFAC and saying we need to be paying artists that lobbying the government and kind of showing the impact that we have is really important.
Yeah, I think artists need to understand that is the role of CARFAC. I mean, that you're the voice for artists, and we kind of because you're an artist, you understand what maybe some of the needs are, right? We're not affluent, you have to look at, some are more successful than others, but we have a lot of emerging artists understanding, how do I get started in this thing? So, well, join CARFAC. There's senior artists here that you can mentor with. There's all these, reach out. You got to just reach out and figure it out. I mean, it's really what it's about. I would
also say with like, yes, some galleries are small and budgets are an issue, but I think the ones that are more opposed to paying our rates are the bigger ones.
Yeah.
It's always been that way. So there's a difference between a gallery with a $200,000 budget and a $60 million budget. And the $60 million ones are the ones that take us to court. So sometimes it's the principle of the thing. Like Artist Run Centers have always proudly paid our rate. Well, not always, but like since very early. Yeah.
We're kind of moving on. I don't know if this slides in the right spot, but we're talking.
It's all connected. Yeah. It's all connected. Yeah.
Everything is kind of connected, and we're kind of. It's not the fee schedule in this one, but what we're talking about here is the resale rights, right? A little bit, and I thought maybe we're just maybe a bit of ahead of ourselves, but we're probably more about this. I'm sorry, this stage first, and we'll come back to the resale.
Yeah, we can cycle back to the resale right after we kind of work into, because like April said, about the people taking us to court, we've got experience with that.
We're looking at a visual with Rav and CARFAC standing on the steps of Supreme Court in Ottawa, and you won. Like you actually won. You took these guys to the Supreme Court, and we won the case, right, on fee structure. This is for the fees and copyright, was it not, or is this the copyright?
Well, so Canada has legislation that's known as the Status of the Artist Act, and what that does, it allows associations like ours to negotiate collective agreements with federal institutions. And so we've had a collective agreement with the National Gallery of Canada since 2015. We negotiated fees with them so that they pay artists for exhibition, reproductions, and other services according to our rates as a minimum. Like they can legally never offer less than what we've bargained for with them, which is very unusual. We're the only country in the world that has an agreement like this or legislation like this. Sweden has an agreement that's similar, but still not as forceful, I would say. And, people, again, think this sort of thing might just happen, but it really wasn't easy to do. It's not usual for an artist to be part of a union. We don't even have the same workplace. Like people work in their studios, and you can have an exhibition in a gallery that you may never even visit. And so having labor legislation that regulates organizations like the National Gallery through collective agreements is very unusual. And so it took us, there was a lot of fierce opposition from the gallery at first. After 10 years of meetings and 3 trips to court, which ultimately ended up at the Supreme Court, they now pay artists significantly more than they did before, sometimes 4, 5, even 6 times more than they used to.
Yeah.
What they used to pay in a year for exhibition fees for artists to all artists that they showed, they now spend in one solo exhibition.
Yeah. No, it is only right. I mean, they are charging.
Yeah.
They are charging to get in the door, and you are the drawing factor. You're, the artist. That the reason they go to an art gallery is to see the art.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you think about it, the best deal in the world is to go to commercial galleries and see the art shows. They're free. They really are. I mean, and it's contemporary, and I'm just saying, as an outside, just looking at on in another way. But to go to a public gallery, it's kind of closed doors, and you got to pay to get through the turnstile. But National Gallery, I think, is free with CARFAC membership.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it certainly is, yeah. And I think one thing to add about this as well is, like, obviously this was the first sort of collective agreement for artists in the country and many places around the world, but this is something that's ongoing. Again, like April said, this wasn't like stamped in 2015 and done. This is, I mean, we're soon going to be re-entering negotiations. It recycles every, is it 4 years? We come to the table.
Typically,
yeah. So this is one of those things where we're still on the ground. We're still kind of doing this work and putting in the work to make sure it stays and it changes.
Can you tell us about who did the drawing?
Yeah, so in this picture, it was a part of a national conference we organized called Art Plus Law, and it was about different legal issues, whether it's copyright, labor, I can't remember the other things, but yeah, it was an event about the legal issues that artists face. And so we hired Karen Bailey, who is a member and also a courtroom artist, to sketch all of our panels.
Yeah.
She did a great job.
Yeah, no, it was a nice to add that to. Okay, so there's my solution. I got to go back to the problem.
The problem, yeah.
Perfect.
Let's skip the problem and go right to the solution.
Problem.
Yeah.
So we get into situations here where you sold a piece of artwork early in your life as a career artist.
Yeah.
And in this case, Ashkev sold a piece of art for $24. Inuit piece of work. Later in life, not that long later, what is it here? $185,000, $500 sold. Now we're saying, well, we're talking about the resale rights. Like, that's basically what we're trying to legislate that. I mean, we're talking about not a lot of money, maybe 5%. Can you speak to that a little bit about where we are and where we're going? I mean, I've got a number of other slides that I have to jump through here a little bit, but to get to them. But can we talk about the resale right a little bit, where we're at and where is it going? Like, is it going to get here?
Yes. So the artist resale right is something that CARFAC and RAB have been advocating for at least 16 years. I mean, to be honest, I found it in the list of things we said we wanted to do back in 1974. And I think maybe at different times we said, oh, we'd like this, but there was never a real serious concerted effort to bring it forward. And so since about 2009, I've been kind of working on this with our colleagues. And the artist resale right allows artists to share in the ongoing profits that are being made on their work. It's, as we all know, common for many pieces of art to grow in value over time as the reputation of the artist also grows. So in this example, the Enchanted Owl by Kanoyak Ashevak, she originally sold it for $24. It sold for, well, it's actually been at auction many times because it is actually a limited edition print, but one of the biggest auctions to date has been for just over 185,000. And what we're asking for is that artists receive 5% from future sales of their work. And so 5% is still substantially more than what she received in the first place, but it's also a pretty small percentage compared to what everybody else in the art market is making on her work at the moment. And this kind of thing really does happen across all artistic disciplines, but everybody else has found solutions to their problems sooner than we have. Other types of artists get paid when their work continues to grow in value. Writers get paid when their works are reprinted. Margaret Atwood, who we talked about earlier, 1985, The Handmaid's Tale there were only 500,000 books printed. Well, since then, 8 million have been printed. And I hope, at least I really hope, she continues to get paid for each reprint. Certainly she's been paid for different movies and the big television show that's being made. And so people recognize that there's a value that she brought to this work, which is hers initially when it was created. Similarly, composers get paid every time their song is played on the radio. And so what we're saying is that the artist resale right should be included in our Copyright Act, so that because visual artists also deserve to be paid for as long as their work continues to have success in the secondary market.
And I think people don't realize that. People don't realize that, like, if they see something get sold in the auction, they're like, oh, great, the artist made. No, the artist got none of that secondary sale. So 5% it's not too much to ask for, right? So
no.
It's a small piece. And a lot of times it's more in the senior years where they probably will need some of that funding. If not, it does go to their estate. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, the average senior artist in Canada makes about $5,000. And so you're right that people often want to buy the stuff that made them famous. And so to not get a percentage of that sale later on, when you probably need it most, is just not right.
Yeah. Tom Thompson's not going to need any right now.
Well, Tom Thompson's work is in the public domain. So
Which happens
It-
after 70 years, is it?
It is 70 years now, yes. So yes, I mean, there are many senior artists, Indigenous artists have their work resold commonly for much higher prices in the secondary market. Some estates will definitely be included as long as their copyright hasn't worn out. But yeah.
This is mostly work in the secondary market, correct?
Only, yeah.
Yeah. So from what my reading is, it really hasn't affected the resale of work. People haven't,
No.
in what you've got 90 other countries that have this implemented. I'm really surprised that Canada being part of the Commonwealth, we have other Commonwealth countries that are all tied in on this from the UK, Australia, New Zealand just signed on using the trade agreement with UK as their device, I guess, as their device to how to connect. We're connecting through copyright as well, are we not? Through the thing. So why is Canada holding back? What's holding us back a little bit?
Is that the $1 million question?
Yeah. Honestly,
$1 yeah.
I don't think there's even fierce opposition. There's just really strong apathy. You know, it's easier to do nothing than to put something forward that may have unintended consequences for the economy. And so politicians of all parties have been supportive but tentative about really putting it forward. Having said that, you know, like it has been a really long, slow process, but the federal government did go through a little over a year doing a consultation process, talking with stakeholders, having roundtables with artists, and then in November and December they put out a public opinion survey just to see what people thought about it, and that's all wrapped up, and they're ready to go. We're looking to bring forward legislation hopefully this year, but in any case, it's very soon. So just not soon enough for us because it's like 16 years. Am I going to retire before this happens? I hope not. I don't think so. I think it's coming, and I think it's coming really soon.
Yeah, I agree.
Part of this comes through lobbying processes and pressures that are put on politically, whether it's artists and galleries gathering together and in a supportive manner, not being a protectionist manner. So who actually would collect these fees? And auction houses and commercial galleries? Is that who collects the fee and submits it to the artist? Do they have to register in some way?
Yeah, so where it works best in other countries, because over 90 countries do have it, is when they have a collective like administrative system. So a copyright management organization. We're recommending Copyright Visual Arts, used to be known as CARC. We're recommending that they contact auction houses and dealers twice a year to ask for their sales information. They collect the payments and they distribute the royalties to artists. They already do this for exhibition and reproduction licenses and are well placed to do it. And I think it's a good thing to have like a mandatory collective management system in place, because otherwise artists have to figure out whether their work has been sold and have to chase everybody down. A lot of times this information is not made public. It is with auction houses, but it isn't with dealers. So having an intermediary in the middle to do it for you just simplifies it for everyone.
So as an individual, if I own a painting and I resell that painting, am I obligated to the same types of things?
So the sale has to happen through an auction house or a dealer or some kind of sales intermediary. So if Daniel gave me a painting and I gave it to you, Paul, or sold it to you, it wouldn't apply.
Okay, so really people don't have to worry about their own personal collections unless they go through an auction house.
Well, yes,
exactly.
Does that fee come out of the auction fee or out of the seller's fee? So in other words, where's the 5% coming from? From the actual person reselling the work, or?
So it's 5% of the selling price.
Of the total selling price.
Yeah, and with auctions, it would be the hammer price rather than the total fee, because they add a buyer's premium. That's the thing. What we're asking for is 5%, but they collect 5 to 25% as a buyer's premium when you buy art. So, yeah.
Well, we can't solve that problem. So
I'm working on it though.
We have to. We have to keep pushing away. This was an amazing time. Grant McConnell was the president at the time in CARFAC, actually standing on the steps of the Supreme Court in that one battle, and he represented CARFAC in Geneva. This is an amazing thing. I mean, sitting alongside the granddaughter of Marc Chagall. I mean, it's an important thing when you go to a city like Geneva. I mean, Switzerland has been known for these areas of deliberation, and I mean everything from the early days of the war trials and different things. Geneva was the spot. It was seen to be the neutral territory, and it had a bit of credence. It had a bit of weight. And when I saw this, I went, "Oh my gosh!" And I said, "Artists in Canada, or the Canadian artists through CARFAC sent Grant there." Like that was like that. It was so important to see that we're on a national, international stage, presenting what we've got to present on behalf of Canadian artists. I think you're not just sitting at home. We're not just sitting at home in our studios. We're actually reaching out to people and standing on steps and moving and shaking a little bit as best we can. I mean, we're artists. I mean, we like to go and paint in our studios and do our thing, and it's just nice if you're part of an organization that will represent you in a classy way, and I'll put it that way. There's not a lot of ankle and biting going on, but we do need a bit of force once in a while, and it's nice to have the support of Canadian artists to support the initiatives that are being pushed through on our behalf. I mean, everything from getting paid for shows and protecting our copyright with our governments, and we use them every day in our work. And it's important that everybody understand what's going on and appreciate the work you guys have done. I mean, I really appreciate it. Myself personally, I've sat on a couple of boards in our local chapter, and I've been at a few AGMs. I haven't fallen asleep. Totally, not like which is very, very nice to know, because there's very active conversations and you have good speaking, and there's workshops and good camaraderie. I mean, with good artists. The artists are caring, and they care more than just about their own work, and that's what I really like about it. Is so we're getting near the close of what we're doing, but I think people need to understand it. Join, just be part of it, and come out to the meetings once in a while. You don't have to go to everything. AGMs now, are they online once in a while? The AGMs?
Our national one is. The provincial ones, some are in person, some are online, some are hybrid.
They're trying to get back after COVID. They're trying to get back to the in-person. I think Saskatchewan's has an online one, and as well an AGM. It keeps costs down, but they can do a lot more different kinds of things with the online presence a little bit. But I think, is there some other things you want to tell people? I mean, we have an artist base there from all over, and some are from other countries. They don't understand that. We hardly understand what we've got working for us, but understand this is a gem. I'll call it that, to have CARFAC. And can you speak to anything you want to speak about, a little bit about CARFAC and where we're going in the future and something like that?
I think if I could say one thing, it's just, you've kind of echoing what you just said. I think people should really be proud to be involved in CARFAC and the work that we're doing. I mean, speaking to what you were saying about like going to Geneva, like having all these conferences, traveling around the world, that's excellent, and that's good work that we should be doing to build those networks. But also, Canada is sort of seen as a leader in many ways when it comes to representing artists being treated fairly, having the fee schedule. Like no one else has that right now. And so to be able to kind of be a part of that and what made that happen, I think it's definitely something to be proud of. And the artists who are joining at the regional chapters and getting involved and going to fundraisers and joining these committee meetings, I mean, they're the people who are making it all happen under the guidance of April and the amazing team at CARFAC. So get involved, check out the website. April, I'm sure you've got lots more to say.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because on this last slide, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. We really are an association of artists working for artists. It's always been critically important that artists represent themselves in these issues and can have a voice. And, I think we're unique in having a federated network of a national body, but provincial chapters, because there are hundreds of people on our boards making decisions about how we operate and what priorities we have and should take. And we're nothing without that. So we really support getting involved and being part of it. So thank you to all of you who do.
Yeah. No, and I do want to thank all the galleries that are actually paying fees. I mean, right across the country, because they sometimes don't get the little kudo that they understand. It's, they're actually they're following legislation, but you know what? That really helps the artist. When the artist sees the check come after they have their show, they go, "Oh my gosh, I got paid from the gallery in my local gallery or the public gallery in a different city of a show," and that shows that it's important. Like, it was important enough to be paid for what you do. People want to see what you do, and they're willing, and the gallery is willing to pay you to show other people what your thoughts and your ideas that you're presenting. So again, thank you to the public galleries that are paying fees to our artists. It's really it's not so much humbling, but it's needed, and it's about time, and I appreciate it. And I heard the structures are going up. The fee structures are, in the next 3 years, they have an increase, a little small increase each year.
They always do. Yep.
And that's good, because everything doesn't just stay at the minimum, which we're always trying to raise the minimum bar. So again, I'd like to really thank you two, April and Daniel, for joining us.
Thank you.
Very informative. I think it's only a start what we're doing, but I think we're just keep up. You know what? And as you know a little bit more about our resale rights, come back. We'll have another conversation, because I think
absolutely we'll be back to celebrate.
Well, yeah, we could do that. We all get our tuxes on, and we could have a little Prost, a little glass of schnapps or wine. be great. Well, thank you again for today. And I don't know if we're going to see Stephen at the tail end. There he is.
I was going to say, a great interview. Thank you very much. I didn't want to interrupt, because I can't ask them my usual questions. So it's like how much is your art? Doesn't really pertain here. So, but it was a great show. So thank you so much.
We have a minimum rate.
Yeah, we have a minimum rate, right? So please come back, and when things are happening, let us know. We'll be more than happy to put you on. And for everybody that's watching or listening, don't forget to subscribe and like. And Paul will be back next Thursday with somebody phenomenal. And thank you guys for being here. And Daniel's about to catch a plane, so we need to let him go. Everybody, have a great rest of your day. Cheers, everybody.
Hang in there for a bit.